Hi, delighted to be joined here by Henry and Ashley. Henry, you are currently working with Equinor to implement a new blockchain technology within the energy sector. This is one of the first times that I've seen this happen within the energy sector. So can you kind of talk us a little bit about how that works and what you're doing with Equinor, please?
Yeah, sure. So our mission is to reduce transactional waste in the oil and gas supply chain. We do that by removing the amounts of hours engineers spend checking the quantities and rates and so on invoices. There's a surprising amount of time that goes into that, man hours and duration. So we want to automate that whole process. So that'll save engineers man time so they can spend time doing engineering instead of invoicing. And it'll also speed up payments for the suppliers, improving their day sales outstanding.
So looking at it from a metrics perspective, what kind of percentages are we looking at from a cost-saving perspective and a time-saving perspective?
I mean, that very much depends on the company in question and the relationship between the buyer and seller. But typically you might be seeing engineers spend north of 20% of their time doing invoicing. And we want to reduce that to zero. Engineers quite like this. They like the idea of not having to go into an ERP system and fiddle around in there. They'd much rather spend time designing and drilling wells. We think we could give back a day out of every week to drilling engineers. In terms of day sales outstanding improvement for the suppliers, we think, I mean, again, it depends and it varies around the world as well. But you sometimes see days sales outstanding exceeding even 100 days, just because it takes that long to agree on the payments of the invoice. We reduce that to 1 day. So the smart contract will calculate the invoice automatically and then execute payments immediately. And that's all put on blockchain, so the data cannot be changed. And from an auditing perspective, that means that both sides can trust what the smart contract is putting out.
So I think this is absolutely fascinating. So just to give me an example, if you use kind of Equinor as an example, and they've got a supply chain for delivery of equipment, how does it manifest itself on an operational level?
So typically, equipment delivery to the rig would be tracked through some kind of logistics system. In Equinor's case, that's a system called Wells, which I think many people in the industry will be familiar with. So we connect directly to the Wells database via API, and we pull in the data on a daily basis onto our database. The smart contract will read that data. It can detect when equipment has arrived on the rig, and when that trigger is detected by the smart contract, it knows that's the beginning of the day rate that it needs to pay for that piece of equipment. And then likewise, when it's taken off the rig, that's when the day rate would stop. If that's the way the contract's configured, I mean, different contracts have different terms. So in each case, we would look at the natural language contracts, of course, and replicate what it's trying to achieve in the code of the smart contract.
But it can be tailored to the operator and your customer as per their requirements.
Yes, exactly. I mean, there are only so many ways you can charge for equipment rental. But yes, there are sometimes differences in contracts between different operators, different suppliers. So to make a smart contract around it, you need to make sure that it's an absolute carbon copy in the code of the logic of the contract.
So from Equinor's perspective, Ashley, what led you to get involved with this?
So we are very interested in exploring different technologies and how we can use those to be more efficient, to be safer, to have more secure operations, to save on cost. So we're taking advantage of this opportunity to allow us to, as he said, free up some of our engineers' hours, for example, to save cost, and hopefully down the road to also look at how we can improve the safety and security of our operations.
And if I can put poor Henry on the spot a little bit, what are you seeing so far in terms of the benefits of that?
So far, we have launched a pilot, and it is looking very promising.
Okay, Henry, I think that's all you're going to get from Ashley. So on a wider note, in terms of the kind of blockchain technology, is this something that we can expect to see a little bit more of within the energy sector?
Well, we very much hope so, yeah. I mean, smart contracts is where we're starting, and that makes most sense because it's the clearest cut value proposition. But the other application, which is also hugely relevant for the industry, is reporting of ESG metrics. So just like we would collect data on moving of equipment between two locations. We can also collect data on, say, CO2 emissions during an operation, as long as they're measured correctly on the rig. Those measurements are put on the blockchain and made visible through the ESG portal on our user interface. And any regulator or potential investor in the company in question can see those ESG metrics. They know that they can trust them because they were recorded at the point of measurement and placed on the blockchain, which is, of course, immutable. So that's one aspect of ESG. The other one is that we're looking at creating carbon credits. So in a similar manner, if a company sequesters CO2 underground, then at the point of sequestration, the amount of CO2 being put underground is measured. That is recorded on the blockchain. A third-party approver can also add their stamp of approval digitally to that block. And then you have, depending on how much carbon dioxide was put away, you have a tradable token. And it could be maybe a token for 1 ton of CO2, 5 tons, 10 tons, whatever. And then those can then be traded in a carbon credit market.
Absolutely fascinating. You're already doing very well, obviously, with support from Equinor and I believe Saudi Aramco. I can only see this increasing over the next few years. Thank you very much for talking to me. Much appreciated, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the event.
Thank you.
Thank you.